An anti-tank ditch is a deep, wide, and sometimes water-filled ditch designed to defend against enemy tanks by preventing them from being run over. So basically, an anti-tank ditch was developed to prevent or completely stop a tank attack. Historically, they were mostly built by civilians. These ditches require hardly any building material, but significantly more manpower. Thousands of ditches were dug outside Moscow in 1941, outside Stalingrad in 1942, around Kursk in 1943, and Berlin in 1945. So anti-tank ditches were dug on many fronts, but their effect was mostly very limited. A German panzer division attacked in ad hoc combined arms formations, which was called Kampfgruppe or battle group. A typical German Kampfgruppe consisted of 1 or 2 tank battalions, 1 Panzer Grenadier, so mechanized infantry battalion, 1 artillery battalion, and 1 pioneer, so engineer company. This company was responsible to help the other formations to get across the anti-tank ditch. They followed the tanks in a special vehicle, the Sonderkraftfahrzeug, so Special Purpose Vehicle 251/5 Pionier Panzerwagen, or Armored Engineer Vehicle. This was basically a variant of the Sonderkraftfahrzeug 251 half-track. Arguably the most striking features of the Pionier Panzerwagen were the 2 detachable assault bridge ramps carried along the top of the crew compartment. These could quickly be removed and placed to span smaller ditches, bridges, or other similar obstacles. But inside the vehicle were plenty of explosive devices to breach the wall of an anti-tank ditch. And now let's see the breaching tactic itself. First, the infantry crossed the ditch and cleared the far side of defenders. Then the engineers approached the ditch, left the Pionier Panzerwagen, and got inside the ditch. They breached the walls of the ditch with the help of explosive devices. Large demolition charges were placed just behind the edges on both sides to blow down the banks. The collapse of both sides allowed at least the fully tracked vehicles to cross it. This might not be sufficient to fill a deeper gap, and ramps might have to be built on both sides, and the soil was used as bottom fill. Once the engineers cleared any potential mines around the ditch, they started to install more substantial and numerous crossings. Another option used mainly by the Allied forces was to fill the ditch by using fascines. A fascine is a large bundle of wood, small tree trunk sized, wrapped together by chains into a large bundle. A number of them could be dumped into the gaps, and the British Army made extensive use of them. British tanks in World War I started to practice of carrying fascines on the roof to be deployed to fill trenches that would otherwise be an obstacle to the tank. Although these were cumbersome to deploy, they proved an effective gap-crossing device. In World War II, the use of fascines continued as gap-crossing device, and within the British Army these were launched from Churchill AVRE, a Royal Engineer version of the standard Churchill tank. AVRE stands for Armored Vehicle Royal Engineers, also known as Assault Vehicle Royal Engineers. It was a title given to the series of armored military engineering vehicles operated by the Royal Engineers for the purpose of protecting engineers during frontline battlefield operations. These vehicles started to appear in 1943 after the failed Dieppe raid in August of 1942. The extremely high casualty rates among engineers was one of the primary reasons for the failure of the raid. The pipe fascine was further developed in the British Army during the Cold War. The majority of obstacles to mobility in West Germany ran north-south, and movement by military forces would have been east-west. Within the area of operation of the British Army near Hanover, there is a significant number of smaller gaps, streams, and small rivers, approximately 5 to 10 meters wide and 2 meters deep, that are sufficient to stop armored vehicles. A solution was needed to breach these gaps quickly and cheaply under enemy fire. In earlier wars, wooden fascines had been used, but these were ineffective for use with the much heavier modern vehicles, some of which weighed up to 70 tons. The Royal Engineers Experimental Establishment did initial tests on the possible use of 9-inch high-density plastic pipes held together by chains. These would allow water flow and not be damaged with the higher modern vehicle weight. This development involved testing in different gaps and conditions, e.g. concrete-lined canals and earth-bank rural field channels, possibility of multiple fascine use in a single gap, and launch testing by day, night, and in limited visibility. During the trials, the development team drivers became skilled at the launching of the fascine and were able to launch 2 or even 3 fascines into a single gap. However, for regular operational use by less skilled crew, it was recommended that only single fascines should be used, as the use of the second or third fascines required the launch vehicle to launch the subsequent fascine while on the potentially unstable first one. This required a perfect launch to ensure the second fascine was quickly in place to make the first fascine stable and held in position. If this did not happen, there were potentially significant risk to the launch vehicle and crew, especially in water-filled gaps. The launch technique was accepted into service and used successfully in a number of operation and non-operational roles. It was first used in combat during the First Iraq War in 1990 to breach anti-tank ditches, like in World War II.